Hey everyone, this is Michael Cole, VP of Marketing at Everflow, and today I'm joined by Tom. Tom, do you mind introducing yourself?
Absolutely. Tom Wozniak. I'm the head of marketing for Optismo Technologies.
Cool. And so this fireside chat came about because we put together a really awesome guide on driving performance through email. And I got to pick Tom's brain and get a ton of expertise and insights on how to actually do email marketing right. And so we wanted to explore that a little bit more in this conversation. So just to kick it off, can you explain a little bit about your background with email marketing?
Sure. So yeah, I was thinking about it, kind of in preparing for this, and I think I sent out my first email campaign sometime in the late 1990s, probably 96, 97. And I mean, it sounds like obviously forever ago, but of course, email's been around for better than 40 years. So even then, email itself was pretty well established. But after that, I went to work for one of the early digital marketing, performance marketing companies called MatchLogic, and was running email programs for Major League Baseball, Charles Schwab, Tickets.com, companies like that, some big brands like Military.com and TD Ameritrade. And then later went on to work for one of the biggest email marketers in the world, and ended up heading up marketing for Affiliate.com and Media Breakaway, and then more recently joined Optismo here in 2017 as head of marketing. So yeah, I wouldn't say dabbled, but I've spent some time with some startups in other digital marketing arenas like video and ad serving and those kind of things. But for whatever reason, I've always come back to marketing. I think it's kind of near and dear to my heart.
And is there any of those email marketing campaigns where you're super proud of it or just killed it?
Yeah, I mean, I can always think back to a lot of them back in the day. It's funny, in those early days, you're just trying to build a list, and I remember one of the kind of startups that I went to work for. One of the successes we had there is I worked really closely with our guy who was heading up our website at the time, and it became his responsibility to work on email as well. And between the two of us, I think we built our audience file by a factor of 100 or something like that. I mean, we didn't have a lot to start with, but we went from a couple thousand emails to tens of thousands of emails in a fairly short time by building a pretty dedicated email marketing program that was all designed to just get people to subscribe, so that we could start sending them more offers. So super basic and kind of ground floor, but I always kind of go back to that one as a nice grassroots way of building an email program internally.
Yeah, I mean, that's genuinely impressive. I often think we should probably get better at capturing everyone who visits email. Sure. And one day we'll do that. It's on the roadmap. Okay. So can you tell me the origin story of Optismo?
Yeah, so Optismo has been around since 2009, so crazy, better than 10 years. It seems like forever in the digital marketing space, but
which is awesome.
It was the brainchild of our two founders, Chris Thayer and Grant Fern. Chris on the business side, Grant's our CTO, and they'd been friends for many years before that, and always they were both very entrepreneurial minded and started a few ventures, and they wanted to do something together and build a SaaS product. That was just sort of a desire they had and something they talked about a few times. Chris had some background in the email marketing arena, and particularly with opt-out collection and tracking. And so he decided, kind of looked at what existed in the market at the time. And while there was one kind of really big player sort of had the corner on the market, their feeling was they could build a better product, a better mousetrap, if you will. And so they got together, built the software, and brought it out to market, and slowly started building the team, and really kind of strategically over these last 10 years, and we've built it now to, I guess we're about 15 people between kind of spread out across the United States and Australia. So all of our tech folks are down there, and the US team, were all the client-facing folks here. But it's over the course of that 10 years, we really become the big player in our very niche space of email compliance, and powering our clients' capabilities to build really effective and successful and profitable email programs, but do it on a foundation of compliance, making sure that they are, fully in line with all the regulations around unsubscribes and suppressing customers that don't want to receive their offers anymore and those kind of things.
Yeah, I think that's always the most interesting thing about email is that, like, I think with every other marketing channel, it's like, just go and test it. It's fine. Just test it, find out if it works, come back. Where definitely email is like the one thing where it's like, no, just make sure that you do, like, dot your I's and cross your T's and you're ready before you launch, because the consequences are so much more seriously taken with email that you have to do it the right way.
Right. Yeah, totally agreed. I mean, I actually think it's a really good thing that, email, because it's been around for so long. I think that's part of it. The regulatory landscape, really around the world, but particularly here in the United States, it is, it's pretty well defined. We've had a law in place since 2003, the Can't Spam Act, which really set up a framework for companies to use email marketing as a foundation of their business, to be able to send commercial email, and effectively to send unsolicited commercial email, which is really kind of a key to it, where we're seeing a lot more different channels are becoming more opt-in focused, and email here in the States continues to be an opt-out mechanism or opt-out focused mechanism, because it's worked well and because the industry has done a good job by and large of policing itself and staying within the guidelines.
Awesome. Yeah. And why should brands focus on email marketing for 2021?
I mean, it's I always come back to it's like at the single most important thing is that it works. When you look at the stats for email marketing going back decades, it continues to be, if not the highest, certainly one of the highest ROI generating digital marketing channels. I've seen most recent numbers are something in the neighborhood of $38 for every dollar you spend in ROI. Now, obviously, that's going to vary from one company to the next, but that to still have that number that high after so many years just speaks to the power of the channel. And I think the reasons for that, there are nearly 4 billion daily email users in the world as of the last stat that I saw. So it's the audience reach is massive. And the fact that from a communication standpoint, it's such a customizable channel. It works really well from a branding standpoint, from just driving engagement, and clearly works as a performance marketing channel as well, hence the great ROI. So looking at those, I mean, it's, as a marketer, we're constantly kind of barraged with new and exciting, what I like to think of as kind of bright, shiny objects, whether that's a new social channel or, whether it's TikTok, it's, whatever new thing comes up that, especially in certain B2C arenas, you feel like, oh my God, everybody's playing in this new channel. We're going to have to build out a strategy for TikTok or Snapchat when that came out. And here's email that's, again, been around for 40 years, is arguably kind of the original digital marketing channel. And it isn't as sexy or exciting in a lot of ways as some of the new ones, but it just keeps working. And that's why I think, for companies that really want to focus on driving results and, and using a channel, not just because it's fun and different, but because it works, you can't not use email.
For sure. And when we were chatting previously, I remember you mentioning at one point just like why email will never go away, because every single new person gets an email address. Can you talk a little bit about that? I think it's a good point to just hammer home.
Yeah, because anybody who's read about email marketing, again, going back decades, there have, I swear, been articles from pundits and industry experts, and I use that, I guess, with air quotes, predicting the demise of email. It's like, oh, people are going to move on to something else. Again, you had social, you had all these other things, and yet email's still there. And like I said, there's 4 billion daily email users or thereabouts. So all these predictions that it's going to go away clearly have never come true. And as to why that is, I think there's obviously a handful of reasons. One, I think people are very comfortable with it as a channel. They're used to receiving marketing messages or messages from companies and getting them in their inbox. Most people are pretty comfortable with how the inbox works. And just to your point, when you wanted to log into a website for, a decade plus, what's the first thing they typically ask for? It's some kind of user ID, but it's almost always your email address. And so that's become the backbone for really accessing so much of the web. And even though, now you can log into a lot of things with your Facebook account, but even that hinges on having an email address to build your Facebook account in the first place. So I think we're still living very much in a digital economy that is built on a foundation of people having email addresses to authenticate who they are. And I don't see that going away anytime soon. And again, I think, despite the fact that people will still write about it and we'll talk about, the next generation isn't going to like email. And sure, when kids are in, high school, maybe they don't use email very much, but it seems like the trend continues that as they get out of the house and they start, moving to the working world, they start using email just like the rest of us do. So I think as from the standpoint of just staying power, I certainly don't anticipate emails going anywhere anytime soon. And that just, again, backs up the idea of why it's such a powerful marketing medium.
Yeah, I just think it's such a good point because I've never seen an article that just mentions like, of course, every single year there's a giant group of like new 17 through 19-year-olds that have like new email addresses and have not been exposed to like email marketing, etc. Like that just means that there's you're always reaching a new audience. And the idea that email marketing is going away is pretty crazy.
I know. I think honestly, I'm sure there are some people who believe that over the years, but it's just a type, it's clickbait. It's a title to put on your article. People are right now, email's not dead. I'm going to read that, and so it's just an easy one to write about. Even if you're trying to argue that it is going to be, I don't think most people really think that.
For sure. Cool. So if you're doing email marketing for your brand, like what are the starting like elements you should have in place before you launch an email campaign?
I think like any other marketing channel or program that you might want to start, you got to start with, you really have to have a plan. And you mentioned it too, that it's like, email is one that you don't necessarily just jump in and suddenly do email without an idea of what the purpose is. And partly because you need a list, you have to have people to send your email to. So I think there are some moving parts that you need to have in place before you really kick off that first email campaign. So like I say, I think it really starts with, setting up your objectives, know what you want out of it, whether that's just connecting with your current customers and maintaining engagement, delivering information through a newsletter or, content marketing, those kind of things. Even if you're not looking to necessarily drive sales with it, have that set up as a goal and how you're going to talk to that audience. And then at the same time, if you want to use it for customer acquisition or to drive sales, just figure those things out right off the bat. And then once you've kind of got your strategy in place, know what you want to accomplish with it, you're going to have to do the kind of standard technical MarTech kind of steps. You're going to need an email platform to send your emails from and to house your email list. And if all you're really doing is, and I say all, if what you're really doing, because there's still a lot involved with it, but if your goal is really just to talk to your current customers, you may get an ESP, you may use a CRM solution like a HubSpot or something like that, or use MailChimp or Constant Contact. There's a million solutions out there. But you kind of need to get those.
ESP being email service provider, so
yes,
like SendGrid or MailChimp.
Like anything else, our industry, as you well know, has lots of acronyms because we like to make it hard for people to know what the heck we're talking about. But yes, I mean you've got to set those foundational things, and also if you're going to be building out a more more robust and acquisition focused email program, then you're very likely to need solutions like Optismo to handle your opt-out and compliance program, make sure that you are indeed, compliant with CAN-SPAM and any mailers that you work with are compliant. And when you move down those roads, then you're also likely to need both affiliate networks and tracking platforms like Everflow. And so it is, it's a complex, channel to really get into and build out along, a large and effective program. But at the same time, kind of the roadmap, it fully exists. It's, while there are a lot of steps to it, it's pretty well established, the kind of partners you're going to need to work with to build it out, what you're going to need to do internally. So that's the nice thing about it, is because it's been done successfully so many times by so many companies that you can pretty easily understand what it is you need to do and all the moving parts you need to collect and put together to build out a successful program. So I think, and then once you've kind of got all the technical aspects, I think a big piece is just making sure that you're building on a foundation of best practices. And that's obviously from our side, we talk compliance, but that's everything from your maintaining a clean list so that your deliverability remains high, that you are, there's a host of best practices just around the constant ongoing practice of email marketing, from timing when you're sending it to being consistent with the messaging, delivering, actually providing engaging content, regardless of what your goal is for the campaigns. All of those things feed into building a long-term successful program. So there's a lot to it, but like any marketing channel, you need to know what, I think that it always goes back to that, know what you want to accomplish from it, have a plan in place to begin with, and don't just think, well, we're just going to try this and see what happens.
Yeah, if only there were a giant guide towards email marketing that drives performance results in 2021. Like maybe on Everflow.io.
I was going to say, maybe on your website and Optismo's website. I think maybe
Optismo's website. So with the compliance stuff, can you explain sort of like, okay, so obviously you're doing your own engagement and intent, but then you're expanding it out to more like performance focused. Mm-hmm. And then you're working with like outside like email partners. Like, can you explain a little bit about the sort of like Optismo like compliance and like what's actually happening there that makes Optismo important in that situation?
Sure. Again, we talk about the Can-Spam Act, and while there's a lot to it, a couple of the key elements of Can-Spam are you as a company are allowed to send out unsolicited email to recipients, but you also have to give those recipients a way to say stop, to unsubscribe or opt out. And usually that's a link. That's kind of what we're all used to. That's the email experience we kind of expect. And then once you've clicked on that link and said, yep, I don't want your email anymore, then that company can't email you and has to maintain that request from you and honor it until maybe you opt back in someday. But until that happens, you're on the suppression list. So if a company is only really doing internal email, and so they're running it through, again, say like a HubSpot or something like that, typically the email service platforms because they're sending your email, they'll automatically include an opt-out link because they also want to stay Can-Spam compliant. They'll collect those opt-outs and make sure that they're suppressed from your future mailings. So it's relatively seamless if you are mainly focused on just your internal house file. Where it gets complicated is you want to engage with third parties to grow your house file, or to, again, leverage affiliates to take your offer out to their audiences. And because of the way Can-Spam works, if, say, a mailer sends out an offer for your product or service, and one of their recipients says, I don't want to receive this anymore, I'm not interested in that offer. Well, that opt-out flows back to you as the original advertiser, and you need to honor that. And so now you've got opt-outs being collected outside of your kind of normal ecosystem, but you need to honor them. So if let's say you have one email partner, conceivably, you could send them your suppression file and say, hey, these are people who've opted out from us. You can't mail them because you're our mailing partner. And then when they collect new ones, they give them back to you and then you add them to the suppression file. You could conceivably do that. It's manual and it would get clunky pretty quickly, but you can do it yourself. Where it gets really complicated, as we know with a lot of affiliate programs, is you start getting more and more affiliates. As the program builds itself, if it's successful, maybe you have now 10 affiliate mailers, maybe you have 100 affiliate mailers. Totally not workable to manually send each one of them a suppression file. One, it's incredibly not privacy centric. And one of the things, while Can-Spam doesn't focus on that, there are a lot of other laws in the United States with the California Consumer Protection Act and the updated version that just was voted into place in the last election, where basically you're the steward of your customer's data, and you need to be taking an awful lot of steps to secure that data. So one thing that is not a best practice there is to send somebody like an Excel file with a bunch of email addresses in it, because that's personally identifiable information. So you need a way to securely have, again, all of your mailing partners access your suppression file, and then again, be collecting the opt-outs from them and in real time adding it to the suppression file going forward, so that you and everyone within your mailing ecosystem is all compliant. Unless you want to build a platform like that yourself, which typically you don't want to because it's not cost effective, you're going to want to come and work with a company like Optismo for something like that. So effectively what we have is a SaaS platform that enables that entire ecosystem of suppression file upload and management, distribution to mailers, and then collection of new opt-outs in real time and putting it back into the suppression file. So from a compliance standpoint, that really becomes vital. And then additionally, what virtually, I won't say all, but a huge number of our clients take advantage of is once you start building out an affiliate program, you typically don't want to necessarily pay affiliates a commission to drive sales from people you already know, from current customers. So it's a pretty typical practice that you also want to suppress your customer file. So, or, again, potentially it's just particular audience segments, but having a platform like ours enables you to do that very, very easily. And so it really powers it allows you to have a powerful and effective internal compliance program as you scale an email marketing affiliate program across multiple networks and multiple partners, those kind of things.
And I mean, that can sound a little niche, but I mean, the larger brands get, the more that they need this. I mean, yep. I don't know if you can talk about it, but you guys have like some huge clients that use you actively as brands.
Yeah, we really do. I mean, again, kind of looking at our website, we've, worked with, we've got, whether it's Salesforce or, certainly not as big a brand as you can get these days.
Yeah.
We've worked with, the Airbnbs of the world, the Match.coms. It's really, it's really, I would say channel agnostic, but again, getting back to the fact that just email works in virtually every vertical. It's not just B2B or B2C. It's not just, e-com offers. It's finance. It's kind of, you name it. And so having, again, been around for, 10 plus years now, we work with 500 or so clients at this point, and just like you said, a lot of recognizable big brands are in the mix there because they all recognize the both the power of the channel, but again also the need to do it right. But I think one of the benefits of it is because we have well articulated rules and regulations from CAN-SPAM and particularly, it's not a mystery what companies need to do in order to have both a successful program that also remains compliant.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like, if you want to scale and you're seeing successful email marketing, eventually you're gonna get to the point where you need to have like these shared suppression lists because you just can't do it. No,
again, it's really not viable from a whole bunch of reasons. We think of ourselves in a lot of ways as an insurance program, for a lot of our clients. And our focus is very, very heavily on data security and data privacy. So because again, we're working with a lot of big brands that's all, extremely important to them, and especially the larger ones that have more public exposure. So they want to make sure every partner they work with, that they're, sharing data with, that their platform is incredibly secure, that, they can track literally, how that data moves from one place to another. And effectively, it doesn't move very much because that's really what you want.
Cool. And I mean, obviously email works for everything, but are there certain types of like products where like, if you were say like consulting for them, you would be like, you should like focus on email marketing? Like what do you see as like the most effective type of products suited for email marketing?
I mean, it's a great question. And I was thinking about this, before the call and trying to come up with really ones where it doesn't work. It doesn't have much utility. I couldn't really come up with too many because there's typically a way, because in, find me the industry or channel where you don't need to engage with your audience in some meaningful way. And if that's the case, then okay, maybe you don't, email isn't your thing. But in, whether it's a complex sales situation where, you've got maybe an informational product or a download, email can be fantastic. And any of us who've seen, it's always funny to me because I've certainly know a lot of people in those kind of spaces where they're selling a course or, some kind of educational content. and they will have what we as marketers might consider not the prettiest emails in the world, or these long
Yep.
scrolling horrible looking things, but they work like crazy, and it's because they engage with their audience so effectively. So it works fantastically for for those kind of industries. I mentioned again just some of the clients we have. Dating, it's been a staple in that space for a long time. In any of the financial services industries, you name it, it's email is a key part of both the sales process and then again the ongoing customer support process.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, and in e-commerce, that's one where we all see it. We're all, I mean, I'm sure we've all bought things from Amazon before, and we all get emails from Amazon, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's the standard, like now you have an account, the welcome email, the hey, here's tracking your order, those kind of things, and then it's the upsell and cross-sell opportunities. And then again later, it's actually affiliates driving you to drive to purchase more products on a platform like Amazon. So it's certainly I think there are somewhere it works, especially if you're if the goal is more transactional, and you are looking to drive sales, then email can be that either funnel filler at the top, or certainly it can be a fantastic closing mechanism to actually get people to click complete a sale or drive a lead. It just works incredibly well in all of those. So yeah, so I almost struggle to pick like industries where I'm like, oh, it works fantastically well here, but not so well over here, because it's just such a powerful tool. But thinking about our clients, which really do span kind of the gamut, I certainly think lead gen is has always been a strong player in the email space. But again, e-commerce, those would be two of the biggest that just immediately come to mind.
So based on the answer, you would say that email's greatest weakness is being too perfect.
It's funny, and obviously it's clearly far from perfect. I'm a big fan of email, having been doing it for so long, and I don't know if I would say, I guess it's my favorite marketing channel from that standpoint. Every channel has its its pros and cons, and again, maybe one of the challenges with email is there's a lot involved in it, and you got to write content, and you've got to be a good marketer to segment your audiences and make sure that you're delivering engaging messaging to each one of those segments, and you got to have a call to action. I mean, there's a lot of kind of traditional marketing strategies, tactics that you need to be very good at in order to make email work. And sometimes that's a little more challenging than, say, getting into display, where you create a banner ad and you start buying media and you see how it works. You get clicks,
and then you spend all your money and then you stop running it.
Yeah, and of course there is more to that. That also is not an easy space to be successful in. But just because what the physical asset or the advertising asset you're working with is smaller, simpler, in some ways that makes it easier. So I think email is a challenging one to do well at, but the rewards are so fantastic if you put in the time and effort to make it successful.
So something we never covered in the guide, but would be interesting to explore is, do you have any recommendations of like best practices about where to capture email addresses? Where on like say like an e-commerce retailer or something, like, is there any specific things they should be thinking about like email capture?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're trying to build your email list, which again, most people are. I know. Yeah. I don't know anybody who's doing much digital marketing that isn't working on building an email list, because it is so valuable. So I think if your focus is really on an opt-in list, it's an information exchange. So you want to make sure that you're giving somebody value for giving them, or for them giving you their email address and opting in. And whether that's information, and so you're going to send them a monthly newsletter, or it's special offers only available to people who've subscribed. There are lots of incentives to provide, but I think you look to make that information exchange a good value for the consumer, and then you make it easy for them to do it. So as you said, like on the website, I think you make the subscription box, the opt-in box for email easy to find. You make it prominent. You'll see it on, of course, a lot of e-com sites do a great job of it, where the first thing that happens as soon as you get to the site is you get a pop-up with a, hey, give us your email address and get 15% off your first order. And if you're really planning on ordering, who wouldn't want to do that? So I
Mm-hmm.
think those kind of tools are, are really effective for building that list. But then I think the key part to having a really successful program is it doesn't stop there. Too many companies will focus entirely on acquiring that email, and then are they continuing to deliver useful, valuable information? Some do a great job, and some maybe not so much. So I think
Mm-hmm.
If it goes beyond just I want an email address and I'm going to monetize it once, you want to really focus on growing that over time. Then you got to build out that more thoughtful long-term engagement strategy about what am I going to continue to send these folks so that they are, remain engaged, and when they get an email from me, they're going to open it.
And in the guide for like the performance email and everything, we talk a lot a bit about like segmenting. Can you explain sort of like how should a brand thinking about segmenting out their emails? Like how important is this? Like when should they start? A little bit
Mhm.
about like both like the process and sort of like the most effective tips there.
Yeah, I think certainly, if you only got two customers, segmentation probably not so important. But once you actually have a customer base of some size, naturally as a company, you're probably doing segmentation already internally. Even if you're not thinking about it from a marketing standpoint, companies will have like these are our high value customers, either because they buy more regularly or they spend more, whatever all depends on the business model, obviously. But and then there's going to be things as simple as geographic. We've got customers in this part of the country versus this part. We have customers that seem to respond to certain offers better than others. You're getting, you build up this wealth of data on your customer and what they are most likely to respond to, what their interests are. So naturally, a lot of companies start to build out segments internally just so they maybe just know which customers are which. But I typically would suggest that, as somebody's building out an email program, it's like, look to the way that you already think about your customers. And if you have these groupings within your customer base, whether you're messaging off them or not, that's a great place to start. But like I said, I think the key is, we already mentioned it, you want to be delivering relevant information. And sometimes you've got customers who might be interested in one type of product, but not another. I mean, whether it's, you're selling products that are, gender based, you got a guy's t-shirt versus a woman's t-shirt. I mean, it can be as simple as that, or it could be, we've got people who, we're selling cold weather gear versus warm weather, and that's going to be more likely to appeal to somebody in one state or another, one part of the country. There's all these, different motivators for people as to what they're going to be interested in that you have to sell. So I think as you're building out really any of your marketing programs, but particularly email, it's good to start segmenting those groups out so that you can decide, it's like, hey, does it make sense to, send again our best customers, the one that spend the most money? Should we send them something different than we send everybody else? Maybe it's the upsell cross sell that I talked about. It's like, somebody bought this widget and we know that now they have the purple widget. They're probably going to want the green one because that goes with it really well. So now you want to be able to recognize those people and send them a special offer to buy the green widget. So it's all of those types of things. And that's really when we start thinking about, again, building audience segments, I think it starts with that, and just finding logical groups of people to put together that you would like to message differently with different kinds of marketing offers. And once you do that, it just so easily drives into email. I think, email works for that as well as any channel out there. And it's one of the reasons that audience segmentation is such a key driver of email marketing success for a lot of companies.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it sounds like a lot of that is really just about like understanding your customer and finding the natural conversation points, whether that's when they naturally would want to be upsold. I mean, it's kind of like, I remember reading somewhere, listening somewhere, they were saying that like when you go to a store and the salesperson just immediately goes up to you and starts asking you all these questions, like, do you want this? Do you want this? Everyone hates it.
Right.
But when they have a question, they want to find a salesperson and get that question answered and then choose that thing they want to buy.
Yep.
So you can think about it with email too, where it's like you want the conversation that is being presented in the email to be the natural points where they would want to talk to you or they would want to learn about this other product. And obviously, like if they're evangelists, like they still want to know what's going on with with your brand. Like, it is fun to be part of another company's story.
Yep.
Because it's exciting to see their successes if you actually like them.
Yeah, it's exactly right. I think it's a really good analogy. And yeah, just thinking about it, it's like, right, you go into the store. I don't think most of us immediately want the salesperson to come up to us and be like, hey, trying to sell us something. It's like, I just walked in. I don't even know what I want yet. But once you start looking at things, then it's the, hey, can I find that in your size? Or, that looks really cool, but we also have this over here that's really similar. I mean, it's those kind of, now all of a sudden they're providing value for you. They're making your life easier. And those are the salespeople we go, oh, that was cool, and you're more likely to buy things. And so it is very much the same sort of approach within email that, make that connection and try to give them the right information at the right time.
Cool. And if you were consulting for a successful e-commerce brand that was just starting their like email marketing efforts, what would be the roadmap that you would suggest for them in terms of like going from like not having a list to actually getting it to the point where they're driving performance?
I think it's, again, it goes back to a little bit like we talked about earlier, that it starts with really having a plan. Decide what it is you're trying to accomplish with your email program. Identify good technology partners to add to your tech stack. And it doesn't have to be a massively complex one, but you're going to need some of those key partners in there. And then begin building slowly, and then once you've actually got the program beginning to kind of go, then I think there are a lot of best practices you really do want to follow. And again, whether that's defining and then executing a fairly consistent mailing schedule and mailing plan. Lots of testing. Email is a fantastic channel for doing lots of, whether it's A/B or multivariate testing, but you always want to be testing subject lines and content and and all the different elements of the email sending platforms.
Do you have any like tools or just like a recommending like starting platform for doing like easy emails with testing?
Yeah, most of, I would say, again, for a company that's really just dipping their toe into email, you can't go wrong with a lot of the I'll call them entry level ESPs, and whether that's a MailChimp or Constant Contact or iContact, they're all good to varying degrees at just getting you started, and almost all of them have some ability to let you test a bit. Now, some are a little more robust than others, but they'll all let you begin doing that. And as a beginning email marketer, that's probably all you really want. But once you really grow into this space, it's fairly typical for a company that is again building out a more robust email program. Probably they're going to outgrow some of those kind of standard email platforms, and they're going to want to go with somebody a little larger. And there, again, lots of options there. And whether it's an Aweber or some of the ones that are a little more enterprise level. And then of course there are people who go all the way out and they're actually building their own platforms to mailing. But that requires a lot of technical expertise that most companies don't have to begin with and may not want to build necessarily because they don't have to. But so I don't know. I think that hopefully that kind of answers your question about how to get started and begin the build.
Yeah, this is just a random side note, but I remember, I think it was like MAU last year, completely unrelated, but just like a fun email thing. So Pinterest was talking about their email strategy internally, and they said that their highest engagement was when they included the person's name in like the subject line of the email. But if they did it more than once a month, like their unsubscribe rate just like skyrocketed. But it was really effective as long as they did it like once a month. And I just thought like there's all sorts of like fun things that you can test and find out, but you have to be very careful because especially when it's a little bit more intrusive like that, you got to be very careful with it.
Yeah, it's just as you said. I mean, there are a million things to test, and personalization is obviously one of those. I think most tests say that it's some manner personalization is great, but you can overdo it like anything else. I think we all get the emails that say, hey, Michael, or hey, Tom, and then have a marketing message. And sometimes they know exactly what we've purchased. And so they suggest a product that is, well related to it. Those make sense. But at the same time, if you push it too far, it starts to get a little creepy. Like, wow, they really I didn't think about how much they know about me and what I'm doing, and especially if they're pulling any data in from other sources,
Yeah.
which is certainly, very feasible for a lot of marketers to do. That you got to watch that line, because if people start to feel like it is Big Brother, like you're watching them, kind of, generally people don't care for that, and like their privacy alarm bells start to go off. But yeah, there's just there are a lot of great elements to be able to test, and you talked about unsubscribe rates go up if they do certain things too often. And it's funny, I was just reading an article this week about some of the election emails, and talking about the cadence of how often emails were being sent. And without going into even mentioning who or what, one of the campaigns leading up to the election was literally averaging 26 emails a day to their list.
Whoa.
Literally more than one email an hour. And yet it didn't appear that, political emails are a whole other animal, because they don't have to comply with CAN spam. So there's and a lot of other laws.
Interesting.
Yeah, I know it's kind of an odd situation. So they are not actually required to provide opt-out links, as an example, necessarily in all cases. They should, but anyway, they didn't see their opt-out rate actually go up necessarily in relation to the massive amount of sending they were doing, which I thought was kind of fascinating. But just the idea that you're literally sending people an email every hour during a 24-hour period, not even just while they're awake, and yet people are opening them and being engaged, and like their open rates stayed very consistent. So I think it speaks more to the fact that if you have a really engaged audience and you know them well enough, and you'll have a pretty good idea how often they want to hear from you. And in a case where they are truly, really crazily engaged in something, especially with maybe kind of a time box sort of situation like an election, maybe you can't talk to them too often. I wouldn't recommend that to any email marketers that I know, particularly, to start emailing people every hour. It just speaks to the fact that it's really about that relationship you have with your audience, and if that's the relationship and they want to hear from you that often, okay, you've got an opportunity to do that.
Yeah, I was actually going to mention the political email. Like, one of the ones that drove me nuts for like personalization was like, this email was just like, if we don't receive $48 by Friday, the end of the world will happen. And it's like there's times where like those political emails are like so like insulting. You're like, that's ridiculous.
I think, yeah, the political advertising world in general is kind of fascinating. And it's typically because in some of the channels, and I am, by the way, not a legal expert, I'm not a lawyer, so I always try to caveat that when I start talking about CAN spam or any of the regulations. But political advertising is exempt from a number of rules that the rest of us, who are doing B2C or B2B marketing, we have to follow. And so it does interest me to watch them sometimes not follow best practices, and sometimes, like you said, to the point of almost being insulting. And yet, again, in another case where you got this, one email every hour during the day, and yet people are not upset by that because they're not engaged with it. So political is a whole different animal for sure.
Yeah, I think it just also boils down to like, there's a time when being very specific like really lets you engage closer, but when like the specificness doesn't really have any justification, that's when it's like less appealing. So I think that goes with segmenting too. Like, if you're emailing them about a specific product that they would be naturally interested in, then it feels, oh, they're helping me out. Whereas if they're pointing out something like in a different rack somewhere and they're like, you need that, you would be like, no, I don't. Like, how dare you?
Yeah, exactly. And it does get back to knowing your audience, and that so much of it comes down to that. And of course, you learn about your audience over time. And some of those learnings come from doing the wrong thing. It's because you do test, like, well, let me see if I send another email. Currently I send one a day. What if I sent two a day? And then you watch your opt-out rates go up and you watch your engagement rate go down. You go, oh, okay, that's too many. Now it's, well, what if I did two every other day or something? So it's part of it is dialing in and, not as we all know, not every marketing campaign is going to be a success in a sense. Sometimes you learn what not to do, but as long as you're learning from it, as long as whatever you're testing is going to teach you something that you can then optimize from in the next one, I figure then none of them are really failures as long as you take the positive learnings out of it.
Cool. So one thing we didn't get to cover in the guide was about SMS.
Yep.
And I know you're doing some stuff there, and it's a pretty interesting space. Can you just talk a little bit about how not only do you see SMS fitting with like overall marketing, but with like your like performance initiatives as a whole?
Yeah, SMS, we've certainly seen it. I mean, I personally and we as a company have seen it really grow in the last couple of years. It's another one that's been around forever. It's been around since the beginning of the mobile phone. We all got text messages, and it feels very antiquated in a lot of ways because it is typically a text message. A lot of limitations. It's a short amount of info typically you're going to receive in the message. Doesn't normally have graphics or, all the cool functionality that you can get in an interactive email or certainly on a website or any of those kind of things. But it is incredibly powerful when it's used right. And it's largely based on we've become such a mobile first world. We all have these devices in our hands, virtually every waking minute, or at least at hand. And text messages are incredibly immediate. Stat-wise, the stats that I've seen is that something on the neighborhood of 98% of all text messages are read, opened, if nothing else, because you want to get rid of it. But it is it. And it's typically done quickly. Most of us check our text. We see a new message pop up, we go check it, and it usually happens within a minute and a half. And we either then decide to get rid of it or we respond to it. So it's, as marketing mediums go, think about that. What other one drives that kind of immediate reaction from people? And there really isn't another one that you can do on any kind of massive scale.
Yeah.
So it's, while it has certain limitations, if you can dial those in, boy, it's powerful to get in front of people. It works really well with email. It works well in conjunction with other marketing channels. If it was just SMS itself, you get a message from some company you've never heard of, or someone you've never heard of, you're going to open it and get rid of it, but you're not going to respond to it and click on that link and go buy something because you know that you trust it. But especially if it's coming from a brand that or a company that you've done business with, you're much more likely to. And so in conjunction with building a relationship with the consumer through a lot of other channels, boy, that can be a great, additional piece to it. Now, it also comes with a lot of other challenges from a legal standpoint. We talk about email being really nicely defined. Like it's, can spam is pretty understandable because it's been around so long. The FTC has, written lots of documents on, how to comply with it, and by and large, it's fairly straightforward to do so. SMS is a little bit different in that it's typically governed by laws around telemarketing that were not designed for messaging. They were designed specifically for mobile phones and for telemarketing in general. So one of the primary laws is the TCPA, the Telephone Consumer Protection Act, which goes back decades. Initially, it's been updated, but I think there's actually some hope that in the next year or two, it will get more clarity around it about how specifically it applies to text message marketing or SMS marketing. And that will be really useful for marketers. But it's an opt-in channel for sure. So, very different from email in that sense that you are not supposed to just send out text messages to individuals who haven't asked you to do so.
And so when you say that, is that as easy as like adding a checkbox that says like, hey, by submitting this, say like demo request,
yep.
You may receive email or text?
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You want to get people to opt in and give you their cell phone number so that then you can connect with them that way. That's clearly best practice for sure, and the best way to build that kind of a list. But yeah, so once you've got that relationship with somebody, it's a super powerful medium. And again, we've seen just usage from our clients because our platform, while email focused, we also effectively provide the same suppression list management technology for SMS. And we've got a growing number of clients that take advantage of that. And I, 2020 being the very strange year that it's been for all of us for, obvious reasons, I do anticipate, text will continue to grow, in the years ahead. And again, I think getting some of that regulatory clarity will probably be good for it, much like it was for email, because typically marketers, they want to know what they can and can't do, and it's almost when there's too much gray area, that's when it gets murky. One, you get, potentially get some folks pushing the limits. But by and large, marketers give them the rules of the road, and most folks are kind of happy to figure out how to follow them and still be very successful. I think that's going to be the case with SMS continuing going forward.
And have you seen any like really successful implementations of this for marketing?
Not any one particular comes to mind from a client of ours. I see it would be more from my own experience as a consumer. And again, it probably just goes back to, to a handful of brands that, I've got a fairly, I guess, strong relationship with because I buy from them regularly. And they do definitely, reach me via text. And because I know when they're texting, they're actually it's going to be a special offer. It's going to be off, 50% off, something like that. Typically, I'll check what they're sending because, and without question, some of those have drove me back to the website to take advantage of it. At the same time, unsuccessful ones, it's typically from a brand that I'm not that engaged with. Why are they sending me this? Let alone the political texts that became just ridiculous, regardless of what side of the aisle you were on. I don't know about you, but I certainly got bombarded with, a large number of political texts that I know I never asked for. I don't know where they got my number, and they just kept texting me, various things about the election.
Yeah, I sent at least 100 stops out. Stop. Yeah, it's super interesting. I feel like SMS is definitely like really unexplored because there has to be, I feel like you create a rubric where it's like, if they're like a third time purchasing customer, like let's start sending them special deals via text. Because if they're a customer and they put in all the information and you've just had something that they're opting in, like you could start texting them at that point, right? Because you asked them for compliance on that first purchase.
Yeah.
Because at that point, they could just be like, you're part of a special club that gets an extra discount, and you would be like, oh, I'm special now.
Right, completely. Yeah. And I think that's a good example of a good best practice for it. Because I think the thing to remember is, on the one hand, yeah, it's like right in front of somebody's face when you send it to them, but remember, it's right in front of their face. And so if they find it irrelevant or annoying, yeah, they're going to opt out, like just like you said, that you're going to get a stop response back fast on those. So I think it's important to use it judiciously. But yeah, when you've got something useful, valuable to send to them, and whether that's a special offer or special news that you really want to deliver in a timely manner, SMS is fantastic.
And is SMS and email completely separate in terms of like suppression lists? Like they say do not contact on, say, an email. That doesn't remove, obviously you don't want to do it in that situation, but like that each one of these is completely separated, right? In terms of like you stop one, it doesn't affect any of the other ones.
Yeah, that's probably really going to go back to the way you set up, again, especially if you're talking about, subscribers, to your house file. It's going to go back to how they opted in the first place. And typically you're getting them to opt in each as kind of they're separate channels. And so when you get an opt-out for email, and you want to make this clear in your language, certainly, is that they're opting out from email. And they're not going to get marketing messages from you by email. Now you may give them you may create a preference center that says, hey, you want to opt out from all communication, all marketing communications on any channel. You could certainly do that. In that case, that would become more of a universal opt-out. But in most specific instances, the link in the email is going to be an opt-out to the email, and that stop message to the SMS is going to it's going to stop the calls, but it isn't going to necessarily impact your email list.
Awesome. And if anyone who's watching has any questions, just feel free to put in the Q&A or in the comments if you're watching this afterwards. Just to sort of look towards the future, Is there any newer technologies or opportunities that you've been seeing coming out, getting more popular, that you think are going to make email marketing more successful?
Yeah, it's again the thing that I think has kept email going for 40 years is it keeps evolving, and I think that's obviously really vital for it, and that's not going to stop. As far as specific things going forward, we're seeing more. There's way more interactivity in emails than there used to be. It's now possible, depending on inbox provider, to have an email where you click on something, buy something, and you've never actually gone to a website. That's pretty amazing, especially compared to where email was, back in the day.
So you're saying you can actually buy it in the email?
Yeah, that's a capability that, and again, now we're getting into the technical weeds on email. Something that I'm not always the expert on. Sometimes, yeah. That's one though, but I've been reading about it as a capability that has been rolling out. Again, it largely depends on your inbox provider. So if you've got Outlook, you may have a very different experience than Gmail, or versus Yahoo. But that's something that I know Gmail has been exploring more and more because they want to keep people sticky and just keep them in the inbox and not have them leave. So that kind of a thing. And then, just like it's impacting everything, AI, continues to grow in all marketing channels, and email's just one of those where, some of the decision making is becoming more automated. So you've got maybe dynamic email content being created on the fly and sent based on decisions made by an AI. We're going to see more and more of that. But as I was having a conversation with an industry group about this in the last week or so, and just the idea that I think some people think AI is going to be should be perfect and flawless, and one, it's never going to be, partly because it's programmed by us, and we're not. So it's always about the garbage in, garbage out. It's like the AI is only as smart as you make it, and it comes over time. So I don't think it's ever going to, at least not in the immediate future, just replace say marketers like us. Fortunately, I think we're still in good shape, but it's without question going to become a more and more important piece of a lot of marketing programs going forward.
That's super interesting. Yeah, I was just thinking about e-commerce inside the email is fascinating, especially like I think live chat is such an interesting opportunity for e-commerce because a lot of times like all you want to do is ask a single question about a product, and that's the difference between buying and not buying. It'll be, I wonder if we'll see like some sort of like live chat functionality that can exist embedded within the email, because I mean, you could do the entire sales cycle in a single email.
Yeah, and think about that, how seamless that is from a user experience too. Yeah. So that's the kind of thing that I do anticipate that email is going to be starting to deliver those kind of capabilities in the near future.
That's awesome. And it's definitely like an opt-in friendly future. Yeah. Cool. All right. Thank you so much for your time, Tom, and your expertise and all your help putting together this guide. It's all been fantastic.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure working with you on projects like this. We're big fans of Everflow. Obviously, we love the partnership, and just you and I personally, I always enjoy working with you.
Likewise. And if anyone wants to reach you, what's the best way to reach you in Optismo?
Real easy. The easiest way is just over email, and it's tom@optismo.com. That's just OPTIZMO.
Perfect. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.